Viewers, we are talking with celebrated author Amish Tripathi. Needs no introduction. I think most Indians would have read his works and his trilogies on Indian mythology. Thanks for joining me today on Times Now. As you know, Mr. Tripathi, the ancient Mahakaleshwar Temple in Ujjain has got a massive makeover. The Prime Minister has inaugurated the new refurbished 900-meter long corridor called the Mahakal Lok, billed as one of the largest such corridors. I want to ask you a couple of questions on this. As a Shiv devotee, what does this mean to you first, on a personal note?
It is a very, very important activity, Rahul. I must say honestly, as a proud Lord Shiva devotee, I've of course prayed at Mahakaleshwar ji often, and in ancient times, sadly, the Mahakaleshwar had suffered iconoclastic attacks. Iltutmish had attacked it, and in modern times, sadly, encroachments have eaten into the temple precincts. There is a wonderful lake right next to Mahakaleshwar ji called Rudra Sagar Lake. It's been mentioned in the Puranas as well. And that lake had been encroached, much of the waters had dried up, it had become a sewage dump. And for those of us who are devotees of Lord Shiva, it would be very depressing to walk through all of this as we go to pray to our Lord. And it's very nice. I had the honor of visiting the Mahakal Lok 2 weeks back. When I visited Madhya Pradesh, and I saw the wonderful work the MP government has done, what Chief Minister Shivraj Singh Chauhan ji has done, and the Rudra Sagar Lake has been revived, the precincts have been cleared, and the houses have been brought back with compensation paid. So it all happened very peacefully. A beautiful Mahakal Lok has been built around it with 4 gates leading up to it, and the imagery you're showing, the beautiful statues of Lord Shiva, of the Saptarishis, of various stories and legends around Lord Shiva. They've all been depicted, and much of it, as you can see, Rahul, very clearly, has been built in the traditional style. So with graven images, with thick walls, the way it should be done. And what this will also do is, of course, not just make it so beautiful and make it a positive experience for devotees who visit Mahakaleshwar ji. It also helps revive ancient arts, many of which were dying out. When temples like this are redone, many of the ancient arts get revived as well. It's a wonderful project, and my compliments to both the MP government and the central government in seeing this through.
Mr. Tripathi, when you were walking through this complex, as you said that you were invited a few weeks back, etc., to go through, what struck you? What were the things that spoke to you, so to speak?
In many ways, I think what one is seeing across the country, across the temple, and I've seen it at Kashi Vishwanath Dham, you would have seen that. There's wonderful work going on at Kedarnath ji as well, where many of our temple precincts are being, and all of them have been inaugurated by Prime Minister Modi ji. What is happening is almost a revival of temple structures across. What many don't know is that the only religion whose worship places can be legally taken over by the government is Hinduism. Our temples are taken over by the government, and often very badly run in many states. Temple lands have been encroached, and the administrations have sold off those lands. Things aren't maintained properly, and which is very sad to see. What one likes to see now in a place like Mahakaleshwar ji and at others that are being built up is that actually it's not just that we as devotees will go to the temple, do our puja and leave. We can, even around the temple, there are statues, there are exhibitions. We can engage with our culture, engage with our religion, engage with our way of life. The various stories have been depicted. So even out there, of course, Lord Shiva is at the heart of it, but Goddess Parvati, their 2 sons, Lord Ganesh, Lord Kartik, you see them. You see the Saptarishis, the 7 great sages. Various stories of Lord Shiva have been depicted around the entire lok, like the Tripurasur, so many others, the Veerbhadra, killing of Daksha. Many of these episodes have been depicted constructed. We get to know more of the legends of Lord Shiva. Even a visitor coming, just going to the temple can see so much of that. And there's a sense of pride and rootedness that comes on seeing something like this.
So it's interesting because you've argued how this revamp is a significant event in India's journey as a civilizational state. What do you mean by this exactly?
Look, Rahul, you covered this, many subjects like this in a very intelligent and nuanced manner, because our way of life is not just about the rituals. They are important. I'm not denying that. Of course, they are important. But you cover many of the other aspects as well. Among the things that we have forgotten is that Ujjain was the zero meridian in ancient times, prior to when Greenwich became the zero meridian. And this has been mentioned in the Surya Siddhanta, which is what, at least 1500 to 2000 years old. And till today, the Kal Nirnay, calendar that comes to us, which defines for all of us dharmic people, Hindu, Buddhist, Jain, Sikhs, which defines our festivals, our various rituals. That is all calculated with Ujjain as zero meridian. And if you think about it, Ujjain is also a logical place from which time could be calculated. Ujjain in ancient times, by the way, was called the navel of the world by Indians, because Ujjain is a place where the zero meridian and the Tropic of Cancer bisect. Right? Tropic of Cancer, as you know, is where the sun is right overhead on summer solstice, which in the Indian way is called Dakshinayan. And so at Ujjain on the summer solstice day, the sun is right overhead. It becomes a perfect place to calculate time, to see it as the navel of the world. In Greenwich, the sun is never overhead. It's above the Tropic of Cancer. So many of, in ancient times, great mathematicians, like Bhaskaracharya, Varamira, they would come to Ujjain. It was a center of science, of astronomy, of the observation of the universe, of the skies. We need to revive many of those those ancient traditions. We had great universities out there. Again, sadly, they were destroyed by invaders, but nothing is stopping us from rebuilding those universities. In ancient times, Rahul, on the day of Dakshinayan, the sun's rays would fall directly on the spire of Mahakaleshwar ji. That's the logic of the name, if you think about it. Mahakal, the great lord of time, Mahakaleshwar. There's a logic to that name as well.
So it's not random. That's what you're saying. There was a lot of thought that went behind, obviously, the jyotirling, one of the 12, found there by Lord Shiva himself. So clearly, there was a logic behind a lot of this. Now, you're talking about the room for mythologies, yes, but there's also, of course, this is a place which is a center of learning. Now, this very important intellectual tradition that was centered around some of our greatest civilizational cities, which are still around, of course. This is a very important concept, isn't it? I mean, in the journey towards reclaiming our ancient scientific practices and building upon those.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree more with you, Rahul. I mean, there's sadly, it's almost become fashionable in India to blame foreigners and the British Raj for what they've done. Look, the British had their own selfish interest in doing what they did, but we've been free for 75 years now. What's stopping us from reviving many of these ancient traditions? Our ancestors left behind a large number of manuscripts. There are 3 million Sanskrit handwritten manuscripts that survive to this day. As tabulated by the National Mission of Manuscripts. That's more than the rest of the ancient world combined. And a vast majority of these manuscripts are actually scientific texts, medicine, physics, astronomy, so many others. We need to study them. We need to translate them, first of all. And reviving many of these ancient centers of learning will help us, revive the true treasures of our heritage. Look, things like gold, etc., money, that can be earned back, but knowledge is the true the treasure that our ancestors blessed us with. And so many of us Indians, we don't know that Ujjain was, for example, zero meridian. Many of the mathematical concepts that are discussed to this day actually originated in India. Algebra, has been as a corruption of the Arab, who is supposed to have come up with those concepts, Al-Khwarizm. But Al-Khwarizm himself did not plagiarize. He actually wrote, the title of his book was Kitab al-Hisab al-Hindi, that is the book of Indian mathematics. What we know as Fibonacci series. Fibonacci himself called it the India series. Now, so they weren't lying. They didn't plagiarize. Many of those concepts came from India. In fact, many of them were actually studied in Ujjain, which in ancient times was called Avanti. So I would submit that the revival of the Mahakaleshwar Ji temple and of the Mahakal Lok, we should not just see it as something about rituals and about the beautification of our temple. We should revive our ancient scientific traditions, many of which were centered around these great holy cities. Ujjain, of course, very major in that.
The Mahakaleshwar Jyotirlinga is Dakshinamukhi, i.e. it faces south, unlike the rest of the Jyotirlingas.
Yes.
And the Jyotirlingas are of course celebrated by devotees,
yes.
As it is believed that Lord Shiva himself visited these places. Now, just talk us through the significance of Jyotirlingas and the stories surrounding them.
Look, the primary legend around the Jyotirlingas was, in primordial times. Lord Shiva appeared as the great pillar of light, the Jyotirling. And there arose a competition between Lord Vishnu and Lord Brahma on who could reach the two ends of this great pillar of light, this great Jyotirling. Lord Brahma took the form of a bird to fly up, and Lord Vishnu took the form of a boar, Varaha, to dig down. And after a long time, Lord Vishnu came back and said the truth, that he couldn't find the end of the Jyotirling. Lord Brahma came back, and so it is said that he spoke an untruth, that he did find the end. The Jyotirling was, of course, Lord Shiva. Lord Shiva appeared in his form and said that Lord Brahma has spoken an untruth, and for that reason, Lord Brahma will not be worshipped anywhere, but Lord Vishnu will be worshipped everywhere, and as much as Lord Shiva is, and that is the story behind it. Now, we Shaivites believe that these Jyotirlingas are there at, in a way, some component of it is there at 12 locations where the Jyotirling temples are. So for us, it is they are among the greatest, Lord Shiva temples where we go and pray and be in touch with our Lord, seek His blessings, and seek to be in His great energy.
Okay, so now my final question to you, because inevitably, while certain people would see this as a perhaps retracing of India's journey as a civilizational state, or perhaps even a significant event towards taking that journey, the first steps on that journey, there are many who will say that the fact that the state has invested so much in rejuvenating Kashi or Kedarnath or even Ayodhya and now Mahakaleshwar tells you that the state is invested at some level in creating a saffron narrative that we are actually progressing on the road to a Hindu Rashtra, etc. How do you view this?
Firstly, this can be answered at two levels. One, as I mentioned earlier in your program itself, the only religion whose worship places are legally appropriated by the state is actually that of Hinduism. This is because of a British era law which was brought out in British times, because apparently we idol worshippers were evil or something like that. So our worship places had to be stamped out or controlled. Regrettably, those state of affairs continued even post independence. The government legally cannot take over a Muslim mosque. The Indian government cannot take over a Muslim mosque, a Christian church, a Sikh Gurudwara, but it can very easily and legally take over a Hindu temple. Hindu temple earnings fund large proportions of many state government budgets. Many of your viewers may not be aware of this. Across many states, so Hindu pilgrims essentially fund government budgets. The government legally appropriates it, and they've been doing this for decades. This is not done on the worship places of Islam, Christianity or Sikhism in India. So actually over the last 75 years, the government has already appropriated billions of dollars worth of the money of Hindu devotees. They are only investing a small proportion of that back finally after so many years. So this is not a largesse of the government in any way. I would suggest this is only the government giving back a very small proportion, both the central and the state governments, giving back a very small proportion of what they've already appropriated over the last 75 years. That's the first point. Second point, we just saw the coronation in the UK as well. You would have read the coronation has not happened, but we saw the ascension of the new king. You would have seen one of the descriptions of the royal family there are defenders of the faith. Which faith? The Protestant faith. That does not make the UK any less secular. Anglican, the Anglican Protestant state. And in India, we are not professing, and the state does not profess any state. So I would submit that this is actually a wrong accusation to throw. India is actually, in legal terms, among the most secular states in the world, actually, and in many ways deeply unfair against what are called pagan traditions or ancient idol worshipping traditions. And as I mentioned, the small amount of investments that's taking place in temples is a very, very tiny repayment of money that has already been appropriated by many state governments and national governments over the last 75 years only from Hindu temples, not from the worship places of any other religions.
It's a very interesting, obviously, point of view. My final question before I let you go, because we've been having a fascinating conversation. How do you see the evolution of the Mahakaleshwar, the Kedarnath, Ayodhya, Kashi, sort of, let's call them a complex, so to speak, of immense mythological, spiritual, scientific enterprise? How do you see this evolve? Unfortunately, we do things with great fanfare, but we don't continue, and therefore things sort of fall by the wayside, and things are not well maintained, etc.
Rahul, I agree with you that there are times when we Indians ourselves do not take as much care of our traditions and of our joint heritage as we should. This is unfortunate, and I would request all my fellow Lord Shiva devotees, and indeed actually all Indians who visit these temples, many of which are being revived, the great parisars are being expanded. We must treat it with care and devotion. I was very saddened when I had gone to Uttarakhand recently, and I saw on the way people had thrown plastic wrappers, etc. When you're going to Kedarnath ji, you shouldn't be doing things like that. This is in a way showing disrespect to our great gods and goddesses. It's not only the temple that is holy, even the paths, even the roads up to the temple are holy. We must maintain cleanliness. We must take care of our if our heritage is being revived, then in many ways it's our responsibility to make sure that it remains clean and well maintained. And this is a request I would humbly like to make to all my fellow Indians. Of course, please do visit and pray at these temples. Rahul, I should tell you, my family is originally from Kashi, my father's family. The Kashi Vishwanath ji normally used to get 4 or 5 lakh devotees earlier, only during the Mahashivratri day. Now, I was, one of my cousins is in the temple trustee board. He was telling me that they get 4 to 5 lakh devotees every day. Wow. Can you imagine that? That is what the expansion has done. There are so many people from across the country coming together. But the point is, we must maintain this. We must make sure that the precincts remain clean. We must speak to others who may be dirtying it, that this is our heritage, it's our collective heritage, it's our devotion to our gods and goddesses, it's our, in a way, our compact with our ancestors, that they protected our heritage and passed it back to us. we must make sure we pass it onwards to our children with even greater care and maintenance.
Well, think of ourselves as caretakers of India's civilizational treasures. Thank you very much, Amish Tripathi, for speaking to Times Now, speaking to me on this auspicious day. Thank you very much.